Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for being here and being on time. I really do appreciate it. Welcome to today's webinar, Unlocking the Power of MTSS Strategies for Transformative Student Success. I'm Ramon, and I'll be your host for today's session. Before I joined Innovare as a growth strategist, I was a second grade instructional leader, which is where I first learned the power and challenges of MTSS. I remember when I first encountered MTSS, I struggled to make sense of all the data. Like many educators, I needed a way to create actionable strategies to support my large tier 3 group and even larger tier 2 groups. Implementing a system to track and monitor data changed everything. It allowed me to track progress effectively and see real growth in my students. And that's why MTSS resonates so deeply with me. It's truly a game changer. And if you know, you know. So today, we'll be diving into the multi-tiered systems of support, or MTSS, a powerful framework we all know and love, designed to help our schools make data-driven decisions that can truly change the lives of our students. At Innovare, we're passionate about supporting educators by turning research and best practices into meaningful outcomes. Throughout this webinar, we will explore these research-backed concepts of MTSS and share practical ways to bring these strategies to life in your schools and classrooms. Now that we've set the stage for today's session and discussed the transformative potential of MTSS, let's ground our conversation in a real-world example. I'd like to introduce you to one of our partner schools, Bass Elementary. Their journey highlights the challenges many schools face and showcases the power of a data-driven MTSS framework in action. Throughout today's session, though, I will be highlighting other schools, so be sure to listen to ones that might be in your network. So starting with Bass. A few years back, Bass faced a challenge we hear about often. They wanted to understand student needs more deeply to ensure every student received the support that they needed. But their data was scattered across different platforms like Branching Minds, and they had their attendance somewhere else, their SEL data, and tracking all of it just felt impossible. So that's when Bass decided to unify their data by pulling together their attendance, iReady, IAR metrics into a single view where they could see each student's needs clearly and respond faster. This shift that they made led meaningful change, including the rise of their state designation to commendable, a milestone for the school and community. So shout out to Bass Elementary. Bass's story is a powerful reminder of what's possible with the strong MTSS framework. With that in mind, let's take a look at what we'll be covering today. We'll start with the fundamentals of the MTSS framework and how to tailor it to your school's unique needs. Then we'll explore strategies for leveraging data to address student challenges in real time. You'll also hear a real-world example from a CPS school. We have Principal Jessica Johnson from Perez Elementary joining us today. After hearing from Principal Johnson, we'll discuss practical ways to engage your family and communities in the MTSS process. And finally, we'll wrap up by sharing tips on creating clear and actionable data visuals. My hope is that by the end of this session, you'll have actionable strategies and tools to straighten your approach to MTSS and make a meaningful impact in your school. Whether you're a teacher leader, the MTSS coordinator, the AP, any admin, the principal, we have something special for you here today. Feel free to ask any questions in the chat, and someone from my team will be responding to you at the end of this presentation. If you don't get an answer, I'll make sure to follow up with you via email once the webinar ends. You can access the Q&A by clicking the activities icon with the square, triangle, and circle, and clicking the yellow question mark that says Q&A. Now that you have an idea of what to expect, let's kick things off with exploring the foundation of MTSS. So here's what we know. We know that MTSS is a multi-tiered system of support, and it's a comprehensive equity-focused framework designed to meet the academic, social-emotional behavior needs of every student. It's about the layering of support in a way that matches the intensity that each student needs, making sure that no one gets left behind or slips through the cracks. MTSS has 3 main tiers, each tier offering a different level of support. So tier one is everybody. It's our universal support for all. It is the foundation, and this is where delivering high quality evidence-based instruction and using proactive strategies that engage all students matter. A solid tier one can include clear expectations for behavior and academics that are enforced every day in every single classroom. To make sure tier one is tight and effective, we often track school level overview data like attendance and behavior patterns to see if there are any area that the school might need to refocus on. It's all about catching potential issues early on and ensuring that the core supports everybody. So for tier one, having a school level overview dashboard can really make a difference. This type of dashboard gives you a bird's eye view of key metrics across the whole school, so you can track attendance, behavior, and academic performance. It's a great way for principals and APs or anyone on your admin team to keep a pulse on how well universal supports are working and where you might need to adjust. You can also filter your data to see how different grades, homerooms, or demographics are doing. Now that we've established the importance of a strong tier one, let's move into tier two. Tier two is where we start offering extra support to students who might need a little bit more than what tier one provides, right? This usually involves small group interventions focused on specific topics. So picture your reading and math groups where all the other students are rotating in centers and you're meeting with 5 or 6 students in front of you. The goal here is to keep track of their progress and make adjustments as needed. So these interventions actually make a difference. So scheduling regular check-ins, whether it's weekly or bi-weekly, is a simple way to keep track of this group's progress. In tier two, progress monitoring tools like iReady and ANET are incredibly helpful. They give you detailed data on academic progress for your intervention groups, making it easy to spot improvements or areas student might need a little extra support in. Here are additional progress monitoring tools that you may be using to support different tiers at your school. Remember, tier one is everyone. That's where we have our diagnostic tests, and the intensity of support changes as you move through the tiers. Regardless of the tier, being data-driven is imperative to student success. Having this data at your fingertips makes it easier to make informed interventions as you go. So for instance, if I was the MTSS coordinator at Innover Elementary and I was meeting with the 4th grade level team about reading interventions, I can filter for 4th and see that our 4th graders have consistently been completing lessons and are strong in phonics but need support in phonological awareness. So as the MTSS coordinator, having this data that I can manipulate at my fingertips changes how I'm pushing into my GLT conversations. It makes it easier to make sure we're all aligned with the specific needs of each of our students, and we're focusing on interventions where they will have the greatest impact. This level of targeted support not only saves me time as the MTSS coordinator, but also ensures that every discussion I'm having is focused and grounded in data. This allows the GLT team and myself to address gaps effectively and drive meaningful progress for all of our students. Now let's do a quick poll. What is the biggest barrier to tier two implementation? Do you think that it is staff capacity, access to real-time data, or training? I am launching the poll now, and you will be able to see a banner appear. And if you missed the banner, you can click the little circle, triangle, and square icon that says activities to be able to see the poll there. Awesome. I hope everyone found it. We'll be coming back to the results in just a moment. So building on the targeted strategies in tier two, tier three takes us to the most intense and individualized layer of support. It is tailored to meet the needs of students with the most significant or ongoing challenges. This can look like meeting one-on-one or having behavior intervention plans or even working with external specialists. For Tier 3, regular progress monitoring is key to making sure that interventions are hitting the mark. Often, this level of support involves a team approach with teachers, counselors, family members, all collaborating to make sure all hands are on deck so that child is meeting all of their goals and making progress. For Tier 3, the student profile is a game changer. This profile pulls together your data, giving you a full picture of each student's journey. You can see their grades, on-track data, attendance, iReady, STAR, 360, IAR, and you can track their growth. Let's compare this student's grades from the 5th week of school to the 10th week of school. You can see that their grades have improved in the past 5 weeks. This profile allows you to have critical information about a student at your fingertips, which makes it easier to tailor and track interventions over time with the student profile. I know many of us in CPS also tie in DESA so that they have their SEL data for their students on their student profile as well. So now if I was a teacher also using the student profile, this means that I can quickly determine if a student has any attendance issues that may be affecting their grades, or if their progress monitoring data suggests that a certain intervention isn't working. So instead of sifting through multiple platforms or piecing data together, I have everything I need at my fingertips to make informed, data-driven decisions. This level of clarity allows me to tailor interventions to the student's specific unique needs and track their progress over time to ensure that their support is both timely and effective. Because that's the thing about MTSS. Everything needs to be timely and effective. So by structuring support in these 3 tiers and using tools that keep everyone in the loop, you're creating a system that can adapt to students' needs as they change. Even if you're just starting out with MTSS, remember that each tier builds on the other to provide a layer of support that truly promotes equity. And when the layers are working together and the framework is moving and shaking and we're practicing data with fidelity, it is a powerful framework. We've covered the structure of the MTSS framework and its tiers, but how do we use data to ensure these supports are effective and timely? One of the biggest challenges schools face is staying on top of student needs, not just during assessment windows, but also throughout the school year. So let's do another quick poll. How often does your school review MTSS related data like attendance, academic performance, or SEL metrics? Is it weekly, monthly, bi-weekly, or during assessment windows? A banner should have appeared, and if you missed the banner, go ahead and click that triangle, circle, and square icon to access the poll. As the data from the polls are populating, let's talk about McCutcheon Elementary. McCutcheon faced a common obstacle, which is making MTSS data accessible and actionable for staff, family, and students, basically all of their stakeholders. They were questioning how can they put their data in front of everybody. What they did is that they implemented a unified data dashboard that allowed their team to see real-time updates on critical metrics like attendance, like academics, like SEL, and all that good stuff. So for example, if a student attendance dipped unexpectedly or an iReady score suggested an intervention wasn't working, the McCutcheon team could quickly respond. This real-time visibility ensured that interventions were adjusted before smaller challenges became bigger ones. Remember, MTSS is most effective when it is timely. Now let's talk about Johnny. Johnny is a 5th grade student at Innovare Elementary who has been flagged for additional reading support. Johnny is super bright, but his teachers have noticed that he struggles to keep up with his peers in reading comprehension. So while his classmates are diving into complex text, Johnny often is hesitating, losing focus, or guesses at words he doesn't understand. His reading assessment reveals that he's performing closer to a third grade level, particularly in decoding and fluency. This gap has definitely started to impact his confidence. So he rarely raises his hand in class anymore, and he oftentimes tries to avoid reading out loud. Despite all of this, Johnny thrives in small group settings where he feels less pressure and gets targeted instruction and knows that his teacher is right there beside him. So to support Johnny, his teacher places him in the Tier 2 intervention group focused on phonics and fluency. They meet 3 times a week in a smaller, quieter space with other students who have similar needs. His progress is being tracked weekly using iReady. So for example, if his decoding skills improve, but his fluency remains stagnant, the group might shift focus to timed reading exercises. But if his engagement wavers, the teacher might try incorporating gamified approach to rekindle his interest. Johnny's story shows how Tier 2 interventions provide that just right level of support. It's not as intensive as Tier 3, but it's more targeted than what the general classroom offers. So weekly data tracking ensures that his progress is on track and any adjustments can be made quickly to keep him moving forward. MTSS is not just about processes, it's about outcomes. For example, EdSurge highlights peer mentoring was used as an effective Tier 2 intervention, helping students overcome both behavior and academic challenges. Similarly, schools can integrate creative strategies like gamification or mentoring into their MTSS framework to provide more personalized and targeted support. And we just dropped this article into the chat. For Tier 3, students having a comprehensive view of their data is even more important. The National Center on Education Outcomes emphasizes integrating SEL and academic data to address the unique needs of students facing significant challenges. Innovare's platform aligns with this approach by streamlining data visualization, enabling educators to make informed, equitable decisions effectively. Consider the value of the student profile again that consolidates all the key metrics for a specific student. For any teacher, this kind of tool is a game changer. Imagine you're a teacher supporting a Tier 3 student who struggles academically and behaviorally, and we've all been there. You can easily see if their attendance patterns are linked to low grades or if their progress monitoring data shows that an intervention isn't as effective with the student profile. Having all of this information in one place empowers you as the educator to make informed, data-driven decisions and operate with fidelity. You can tailor your interventions to a student's unique needs and adjust your approach as soon as new data comes in. The clarity and accessibility means that you're better equipped to ensure that the support is timely and effective and ultimately impactful. Let's consider another real-life example. Maria is a 7th grade student at Innovare Elementary who struggles with both academics and behavior since the beginning of kindergarten. She's reading at a 2nd grade level, avoids classwork, and has recently started withdrawing socially. Maria teachers have also noticed that her attendance is sporadic. She comes to school when she wants, and she has difficulty managing emotions during challenging times. Her needs are more complex than Johnny's because this spans multiple areas. Now we're talking academics, we're talking behavior, and we're talking SEL. So making her challenges to address with the traditional Tier 1 support or even with small group instruction with Tier 2, she requires a combination of all of that and one-on-one tutoring for foundational reading skills, counseling sessions to build emotional regulation, and personalized attendance plan to improve her performance and consistency at school. And also bringing in her family and making sure her family is there so that we're all on the same place. By tracking Maria's progress weekly, monitoring both her reading fluency and her bid plan, her team can quickly identify what's working and what needs to be adjusted. For example, let's say her attendance starts slipping again. Her counselor can work with her family to address potential barriers, whether it's transportation or whatever it might be. Similarly, if her reading fluency improves but her confidence in class remains low, then her teacher might focus on pairing her with a peer buddy to encourage her to participate. So Maria's case demonstrates the reality of many of our students in Tier 3. Their interventions need to be dynamic and require regular close monitoring to ensure that we're being timely and effective. We know that regular check-ins are key to catching these small issues, and making these adjustments quickly is really important. So by tracking attendance, academics, SEL data weekly or biweekly, you and your staff can truly ensure that all of your students stay supported with targeted and effective interventions. Here's another poll. I'm super curious. What do you feel is your biggest challenge with monitoring progress in Tier 2 and Tier 3 groups? Do you think it's the frequency of check-ins, the access to up-to-date data, or the time needed to review? A banner should have just appeared. If you missed the banner, feel free to click on the square, circle, and triangle icon to access the poll. And I am seeing the results from the other polls populate. It's awesome that most of us are reviewing MTSS data bi-weekly. Again, having timely and effective interventions is what matters most when it comes to the MTSS framework. All right, as the last poll wraps up, we know that data-driven MTSS practices move us from a reactive space to a proactive space. So by consistently tracking and responding to data, schools can create a system that adapts to students' needs as they evolve. Let me share one final example to illustrate this point. Meet Sophia, a 5th grader at Innovair Elementary. Sophia teachers noticed that she was struggling with both academics and social connections after transitioning back to in-person learning. Using their MTSS framework, the school identified her as needing Tier 2 interventions. Weekly progress monitoring showed she excelled in group settings, but struggled with independent work. By adapting to this data, her teachers created a personalized plan that combined both small group instruction and regular check-ins with the school counselor to address her social-emotional needs. And within months, Sophia's confidence and academic performance improved drastically, showing us how a proactive, data-driven system can make all the difference in a student's life. Sophia's story highlights the core power of MTSS. It's not just about reacting to challenges, but building a framework that continuously evolves to meet the unique needs of every student. Now I'd like to transition from Sophia's story to one of our partners. To further illustrate this, I'm excited to introduce Principal Jessica Johnson from Perez Elementary. Thank you for joining us today to share your MTSS journey.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Colleagues, some of you I know. As she mentioned, I am the principal of Perez Elementary going into my 9th year, and wanted to just share a little bit about our journey, not only using the Innovair dashboard to help us with our MTSS process, but also like even over time, how we've had to adjust and change, and giving some examples of how we've done that. So the Innovair dashboard has been very helpful for my team, not only with the ILT and grade level bands, but also with my attendance team and culture and climate, and in determining the best strategies. One way that's something new this year that we have been doing is around attendance. So using our data from Innovair dashboard and looking at our data to find students that have had a trend of chronic absenteeism. And this year we've tried a different Tier 3 intervention with all students with chronic absenteeism. And one way that we've done this is that we looked at the trends of data of last year's data and students that we've seen a trend over the last 2 years, and began a Tier 3 intervention with grouping students with an adult at the beginning of the school year, right on day 1. And setting up parent meetings with those children's families around attendance and seeing how we can support them and talking about the importance of attendance. We then tracked and had small groups of adults with students and worked with them each week on their attendance. And then as a team, revisited our data every 5 weeks to see how our students were doing and if our attendance intervention was supporting their growth and progress. And then after 5 weeks, we adjusted our groups, determining some had no longer needed to be in our Tier 3 intervention, and their attendance had really improved over the first 5 weeks with parent meetings and student-to-student check-ins. And then we've rotated those groups every 5 weeks to see which students may have fallen back into, or maybe they've improved from chronic absenteeism. That's one way we've really focused on like tiering for attendance and having different strategies to work to make sure our students are in school on a regular basis. And just having the data in one spot. There's so many platforms that are available for interventions, for strategies, so many places to look for data. Having our data in one location helped the ILT and for grade levels to have a consistent method of checking in. I think that's always a struggle is time is such a challenge. And so we've even built that into our grade level meetings to make sure that teachers have time to do their progress monitoring, enter their data, add any notes that they may need to on student progress. And this has really helped to make sure we give time and show teachers that it's a priority. And in this, one of the biggest things I always say is like having a really laser like focus on MTSS. And so this has been our big rock the last 2 years. And so really making sure that then is how we spend our grade level meetings, that we're using the data effectively. And there's always room for growth. We by no means have perfected our system, but really just trying to keep like finding different ways using our data to figure out what's going to work best for our students. And the data, the quantitative data is always one starting point for us to make the best changes and decisions for students. And thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Principal Johnson, for sharing your story. It's clear that you and your staff are doing an amazing job at Perez Elementary, and your work exemplifies the power of MTSS in action. Now let's shift gears into another critical piece of the puzzle, engaging families and the community. As Principal Johnson's story shows, having a solid MTSS framework is essential and becomes even more impactful when families and communities are brought into the process. Involving families is how we truly get student buy-in and create a collaborative environment that supports every learner. When families are engaged, they bring an extra layer of support that goes beyond the classroom, reinforcing the work that we do in schools and ultimately amplifying student growth. The more connected the families are to what's happening with their child, the more powerful the support system becomes. I know that when I was in second grade, anytime I picked up the phone and called somebody's mom, they were ready to get their act together, and they knew that their parent and I were both on the same page. So whatever was happening at school was reinforced at home, and whatever was happening at home, as long as it was positive, was of course reinforced at school. One practical way to keep families engaged, though, is definitely by sharing regular and clear updates on their child's progress. I never called parents only with negative reports. I also called with positive reports. Whether it was a growth in a test score, their spelling test, or something small I noticed in their behavior, the parents got regular updates on their child throughout the school year. One way this can be done is definitely monthly summaries that cover key data points like SEL, academics, attendance, to make sure that the families are involved and stay up to date before report card pickup. Visual formats are typically the easiest way to share this type of data with families so that it's digestible and accessible, and they can actually see any trends in the data. So let's take a moment to stop and think. How could you make your MTSS data more accessible to families in your community? I'm sure we can all agree that it is important to do, but how can we do it in a way that's effective? I know one way we've seen schools like Randolph Elementary do this is by creating their student profiles that give their families a complete picture of their child, and they would print out their student profiles and share this with their families. This ultimately made it easier for families to stay engaged and feel like they were a part of the team. I also want to point you to some additional resources. According to Digital Promise, tools like their learner variability templates can help schools communicate data trends in ways that parents can understand and act on. These templates are an excellent starting point for building trust and collaborations with family. Here are some additional resources that are included in our MTSS guide. If you have not downloaded it already, it will be available to you at the end of this PowerPoint and in an email to you after this webinar. But in our guide, you'll find tools and strategies to support family engagement, including strategies and planning tools, quick videos explaining MTSS, and in family-friendly language. And of course, you have access to me at Innovair, where I can help you get started with the student profiles and school level overview and creating dashboards and all of that good stuff. All of these resources are designed to make family engagement more manageable and impactful. Let's also remember that staff training plays a big role here too. Consistent professional development for your team is also aligned with MTSS goals so that they can effectively communicate data. As long as your staff is practicing data with fidelity and understand what the data is saying, they will be able to communicate that to families. So making sure that everyone knows what's going on and can speak MTSS will also help how it translates to our families. This MTSS readiness checklist is also in our MTSS guide and is designed to provide school leaders with a structured way to assess strengths, spot gaps, and prioritize actionable steps for improvement. By completing this checklist, you can ensure that your staff is receiving the support they need to implement the MTSS framework and be able to communicate progress to families effectively. So we know family and community engagement is vital, and one way to make it effective is by using clear and accessible visual to communicate data. Let's talk about how to design impactful visuals that turn complex information into actionable insights for all of our stakeholders. The way we present data can make all the difference in understanding and applying it effectively. Visual designs don't have to be complex to be impactful. By using simple, clear visuals, you can take complex information and turn it into insights that everyone can quickly grasp on and act upon. One key approach to creating visuals is to prioritize the most important data points. We only want to see what's important. For example, a school using Branching Minds or Ames Reb already have a ton of data, but the challenge is organizing it so it's accessible and useful for everyone. So think about creating a main dashboard view for each tier that highlights critical indicators for that group. Like maybe you want to see attendance rates for tier 1, or you want to track academic growth for tier 2, or maybe you want to see how BIP plans and SEL is doing for tier 3. This clear approach helps your teachers and all team members quickly see where they need to focus their energy without getting bogged down by too many details, and it also helps with the translation to families. Here are a few quick tips. Make sure you're avoiding color schemes like light to dark. Make sure that we're being thoughtful and ensuring equity with the colors that we're using. And that includes being mindful of the color red. Tier 3 does not have to be red. We can use more neutral or softer tones to maintain an objective and supportive tone for all levels of interventions. And then also ensuring accessibility and inclusivity by using clear labels and sufficient contracts to make visuals readable and accessible for all users. It's important to keep our visuals focused and actionable and making sure that you're only highlighting the most important things again. And by following these principles, you can create visuals that empower your team while maintaining an equitable and inclusive approach to representing data. If you're interested in learning more about data for equity, Innovair has a free guide and an awesome checklist to support educators with creating visuals. So check out the Data for Equity guide. I'd also like to invite everyone to take the next steps in strengthening their MTSS approach. You can start by taking a photo of this QR code with our MTSS guide that includes all the resources we mentioned today. You can also use the QR code on your screen here to book a one-on-one follow-up meeting with me. Together, we can explore how Innovair solutions can transform your school's or district approach to data-driven decision-making. So whether you're an administrator or teacher, these next steps are designed to equip you with tools and strategies you need to create meaningful outcomes for all your students. Thank you all for joining us today, and you can use this final QR code to stay in contact and connected with Innovare and access updates on future webinars, tools, and resources. Thank you so much and have a great afternoon.